counting down to the fourth round of the RaceSpotTV World Championship Grand Prix Series, which takes place in just over 1 hour's time, exclusively live on iRacing Live and RaceSpotTV. In the meanwhile, we welcome you to episode 4 of RaceSpot Presents the WCS Spotlight podcast. Will Vincent, along with Scott Whitwist, as we recap everything that happened 2 weeks ago in Japan, as well as looking forward to the fourth round of the championship, when there's so many things still to be determined, and that championship momentum, it could really change in the course of the next 3 hours. Scott, last round we saw the first team in the history of the WCS, apart from Team Redline and 3RD Motorsports, getting themselves onto the podium and a 1-2. Glacier Racing have finally arrived in the WCS.
It was a fantastic spectacle with Alexi Uciacola and Oliver Carla filling out the first two spots on the podium, and Hugo Luis getting the edge over Gregor Hutu. So a magnificent achievement for both that team and both their drivers to have such a wonderful time. Now the question remains, can they carry that momentum through to the fourth round of the championship? It's a circuit that Hutu has been the king of Elkhart Lake on for the past 2 years. Can he do it for 3 years in a row? Well, after this rollercoaster start this season, he's going to need it.
We'll talk more about the woes that Hutu has suffered so far this season, because there is a lot to consider as far as that is concerned. On the flip side, however, a great day for Glacier Racing, a bit of a so-so day for 3RD Motorsports. Hugo Luis, yes, he got himself onto the podium, Scott, however, it wasn't all clear sailing. He was clearly outmatched by that Finnish team last time out.
Yeah, and if you look back also, I mean, Martin Kronke as well came in 5th position, it's in 6th position, I should say, sorry, so it wasn't all that bad for them, but of course, I know they could have been looking for a better result, but Hugo will at least take a psychological advantage over Gregor Hutu coming into this round, because he knows that he's still got the points lead, and he has finished better than him in the past couple of races, so he'll want to carry that on in this race this afternoon, so hopefully, fingers crossed for him, he'll be wanting to try and increase that advantage he has over his major championship rival.
So, a lot to talk about as we go back to have a look at what happened 2 weeks ago at Japan. Our opening lines really are Glacier Racing. Now, it's their first season in the WCS. Some of the drivers, like Alexia Loma and Riku Alatalo, have run before in the RaceSpotTV World Championship Grand Prix Series, however, under different names. Alexia Loma, for example, he ran under the Super Alexi banner last year. He also ran, for example, on 3RD Motorsports. He's been around a little bit. He's found himself a new solid home in Glacier Racing, but he's not the guy we're really talking about. Neither is Alatalo. It's those two rookies into the series. Alexi Uciacola, who in 2012 set the world on fire in the Pro Series of Road Racing, the first couple of races before he had to take a sabbatical. He then ran in the 2013 Pro Series of Road Racing, dominant once again. And Oli Piccardo really has been a standout driver in the 2014 campaign. And there are two Finnish drivers right now who really could actually take the charge to both Hutu and to Hugo Luis. And 2 weeks ago I was saying that they just needed to nail qualifying at Suzuka. That's exactly what they did.
Yeah, definitely, and it's glad that you mentioned that Oli Piccardo is such a strong driver, because if you guys look on the Glacier Racing video page, there is, of course, a great interview with both Alexi and with Oli. And the thing I noticed about Oli was that he's got such a lot of confidence in himself, and it's not a level that he's being arrogant, but when talked about what he wanted to achieve this season, he said that, well, he wants to try and be up there, battling in the top 3, at least getting into the top 5 of the championship, with an aim to possibly going to becoming champion in next season, 2015. And compared to Alexi, who put himself that he just wanted to be in the top 10, and that was it. I mean, Ollie's got a massive amount of confidence in his abilities, and the fact that that was rewarded with a second place in Suzuka really solidifies that he really is taking up the mantle to the established frontrunners, all with the likes of Luis and Hutu. So I think really we have found ourselves 2 new stars of the iRacing WCS, and fingers crossed that they can carry on this incredible form they showed at last time out to the rest of the season and beyond.
So for Yakola, of course, taking victory, Piccardo second place, and you're right as far as Piccardo goes. You have a look what he's achieved this season. Set the world on fire at Spa. Of course, he was part of that controversial clock smash incident at Interlagos, but still had a pace. We believe he would have finished in the 3rd place had he have not had that incident. And then again, second place at Suzuka. For Yakola, however, not a lot of people know who Alexei Yusiakolu is outside of iRacing. People who may have watched the Pro Series of Road Racing in 2012 on Glacier TV or in 2013 on ARL TV may have known about him a little bit more. But really, Yakoda has shown why he is affectionately known as Dracula, because he is just cold, calm, collected, and he got that job done. The insane pressure that first stint from Hugo Louise. Then at the end, let's not forget, those top 4 drivers finished within 2 seconds of each other.
They really did, and the thing which actually made sure that Alexei was up there battling for the win and controlling the pace was that start he got off the line. He had the inside run down towards turn 1. He managed to put himself alongside Hugo Louis, get track position, and put himself in front by the time they exited towards the S's. And that really put Hugo on the back foot, as that he was stuck behind him in the dirty air for quite a while until they made the pit stops. And even then, Alexei put in a fantastic stint to be able to increase that gap. But by the time, of course, they came to the end of the race, as you rightly said, the top 4 were so close together. It was a magnificent battle as it came to its climax. And it was great to see that Glacier came out on top, because it now means we do have now a third team that can challenge My3ID and Red Light. It's no longer a 2-horse race. It's now a 3-1, because Glacier, they put themselves in the shop window, and they are a definite force this season going forwards.
And traditionally, that third team was INX Racing. INX have really struggled this season, and I had a chat with Temo Evenham last week, and he said, really, yeah, they are struggling, they are hoping to get back on form, but still, you can never discount the likes of Jake Sturgis in this championship. You can never discount the likes of Temo Evenham either from this championship. And I think what we have got this year is real depth in numbers. Now, last year, yes, we did have 4 different winners. However, they were generally from Redline and 3ID. The only time that one of those drivers didn't win was the controversial race at Indianapolis. And of course, Atya Kirchhoff won a race at Zandvoort. And then we had the standard people, Hugo Louise and Gregor Hutu. This time, I think we could very easily see 5, maybe 6 winners in the WCS. From good to bad, however, this is the first time in WCS history that Gregor Hutu hasn't been on the podium for 2 races in a row. I spent a lot of time going through the stat books after 2 weeks ago after the race. I couldn't believe it. 2 rounds in a row, Hutu's not been on the podium. It's downing to think about.
It really is. I mean, speaking to some of his compatriots, everyone still refers to him as an alien, as the world's fastest alien. And the fact that he is, a multiple iRacing WCS champion really does confirm that. I mean, if we look forward to this weekend, as I briefly mentioned, he's coming to a circuit where the past 2 years he has been successful. He is currently the king of Elkhart Lake. He is the man who's won in 2012 and in 2013, and last year he did so from pole position. So Greg's going to want to make it 3 wins at Road America in a row in order to really not only get his season back on track, but also to make sure that he gets his form back on track. Because I think when you look at a driver's psychology, when they have these, it's how they rebound from a bad start to a season or bad results that characterizes them as a driver and as a person. Because, I mean, Gregor could have easily been frustrated and possibly, thought, well, 4th place is 4th place, it's terrible. But I think what will be character building for him, I think this is the first season he's had where he hasn't really been the top dog, despite the fact he won at Spa. So how he deals with the rest of the season, starting from now, is really going to be crucial to see how he sets himself up for the rest of 2014 and going forwards for any future championship charges.
Yeah, and it's not been since we had the likes of Jesse Niemanen and Klaus in the series that really Hutu has had a challenge like this. And long-term members of the WCS fraternity will know that dramatic comeback he had. And let's not forget, Hutu is the king of putting the middle portion of a season together. And he showed that again last year, because after 4 rounds of the championship, it was Hutu and Louise neck and neck. They each got themselves a first place, 2 first places, a second place, and a third. This time around, going to be a lot more interesting to see whether or not Hutu can actually get himself back into that championship picture. And also, we can actually have that dominant mid-season that we've seen before. Now, the tracks traditionally do suit Hutu in the middle part of the season. You look year on year, even though the kind of change the schedule around a little bit, it's always Hutu and Redline style tracks. I'm wondering, however, if Glacier Racing start taking points away from both 3ID and from Redline, is that going to hurt Hugo Louise more, or is that going to hurt Gregor Hutu more?
I think it might hurt them equally because, of course, Gregor Houtu's trying to recover from his poor start. Hugo Luis has the edge and he is leading the championship. He's had the more consistent results. So for him, this is going to be obviously because we look back at Hugo Luis's results. He's been on each step of the podium once this season. He's had a second place at Spa, a win at Interlagos, and then of course third place at Suzuka. So effectively, he is the man, of course, currently in form, of course, as he's leading the championship. Obviously, if we look at the middle part of the season, we're looking at circuits which are mainly kind of high speed and mainly circuits that are going to have a lot of interesting sections to them. We look at circuits like, for example, Sebring, which is quite bumpy, Watkins Glen on the boot layout, the long sweeps of Virgin into that of VIR, Silverstone on the Grand Prix layout. We've got, of course, the going back to Spa as well, Indianapolis in there as well on the road course with the oval section. These are high speed circuits. If Houtu's going to have to try and make a charge. He's going to have to make sure he's quick on these high-speed circuits to make sure that he's going to make that charge that he's had before on the same time. If he doesn't, he's going to be in trouble and may have to possibly focus his efforts on getting this season out of the way and looking forward to 2015 to prepare for the best possible chance of a fourth world title.
Now, Red Lines Day wasn't just bad for Gregor Houtu, it was also bad for Enzo Benito. A very silly spin in many ways down at the spoon curve midway through the race, which put him out. We believe he stalled his engine after he did that, which is why he wasn't able to get going again. But Benito, it's kind of been a weird opening start to the season for him. He showed flashes of brilliance at Spa. He had some flashes of brilliance at Suzuka. He had a good finish at Interlagos, but he's only 7th in the championship right now. He expects more. A number of the fans expect more. And for Enzo Benito, it's kind of thinking, well, his direct competitor really to have a look at year on year would be the way Atsi Kirchhoff was with Houtu last season. Now, we all know that Houtu's not doing that well, but still, we almost expected Enzo Benito to be ahead of Houtu in the championship, all things considered, with that incident at, of course, Interlagos for Houtu. But Benito, right now, does seem to be struggling in that number 2 Redline car.
I think it's just adjusting to the brand new team that he has, of course. I mean, he's trying to take up the mantle that, and generally, Atse Kirchhoff has taken up the past couple of seasons. But of course, Atse has other commitments. There's a likelihood that he could be going towards a real racing career. So he's got to focus on that. And of course, as Enzo's now coming into the new team, he's got to learn. He's got to try and develop. He's got to learn exactly how things work with a front running team like this. Of course, he has to learn with how Gregor does things. He's going to have to learn with pushing forward with the rest of the team. So it's all about him just finding his feet in a brand new outfit. I mean, effectively, it's going to take a few races' time. The fact that he's 7th in the championship, I think, is a really good start. I think that it could be worse, but the fact he's still trying to get himself up and running with Red Line. But I think we'll see, hopefully, by the middle part of the season, as we're hoping to see Houtu as well. I think once we get there, hopefully he'll be more accustomed to how the processes that Redline work to. So by the end of the season, he could be up there as a front runner, potentially challenging for podiums. He has got the speed, no doubt. I've seen him in other series around the world as well, and he has got definite pace. But he's going to have to try and just be patient a little bit and work his magic towards the end of the season to hopefully set himself up for a much stronger charge next year.
One driver who really has had a good start to the season is Martin Cronke in that second Ferrari Motorsports car. Now, generally we talk about the WCS, we do think about that team rivalry, but also the way teammates work together. Last episode, we talked about the issues that Redline have had overall, the fact that Mick McLean hasn't run much this season, Ben Cornett hasn't run much this season, of course, Atsi Kirchhoff has got other things in his mind with that real Formula 3 seat going on for him right now. But through ID, they've got Martin Cronke in second place in the championship. And I think right now, for Cronke, this is good because of the fact that he's showing that he can bounce back after what was a difficult middle part of the 2013 season. Many people, of course, remember the near miss with Cronke and Louise at Sebring, lap 4 of the race, and then also that first corner incident at Watkins Glen. But for Cronke right now, I think that he's not only doing that rear gunner that you normally expect that number 2 driver to do, he's actually really doing a good job for 3ID Motorsports overall, and he's showing a depth of maturity.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's got a similar situation possibly to that of Enzo Benito at Redline, but of course, again, because this is something that he's trying to adapt to, of course, now being the main teammate now to Hugo Luis. But the fact that he put it on the front row at Interlagos shows that he definitely has taken up the mantle incredibly quickly and rather well. I mean, he was 6th in Suzuka, so I mean, it's still a top 10 finish. It's still important points to go towards the championship. And I mean, if you look at it on the outset, from an outsider looking in, you think that 3ID were dominating. But of course, as for people like you and I know, of course, that's not the case. We have got, of course, Gregor's still in there, of course, with Redline, Glacier Racing coming through. There's depth of quality all the way down the field. So, I mean, but Martin Kroenke definitely has stepped up, and obviously looking back from the end of last season when he had some problems and had made a few errors, he definitely seems to have shaken himself off, looked at himself and what kind of season he had, and looked and think, right, I need to try and prepare as best I can for this season. And I think he really has. And I think that while his results have been a little bit mixed, I think he has overall he's been mostly in the top 10, and I think hopefully that should continue going forwards. And fingers crossed, of course, if he's going to support Hugo Luis, then effectively this could be quite a season with 3ID, provided it all comes together for them.
And when you look towards the bottom end of the field, there are a couple of surprises as well, of course, as well as the battle for the championship, the top 5, where all the prize money is. Drivers want to stay inside the top 25 come the end of the season to make sure they can retain their WCS license for the following year. Now, right now, you've got Temo Ivonen in 22nd with 30 points, Fulvio Barazzini in 23rd with only 28 points. Two drivers who I really think wish they were a little bit higher up, considering their performances last year. Then you've got Robin Friskop's 24th, Kazuki Omishima in 25th right now. And then when you flick to the drivers on the outside looking in, Christian Laurent, Paolo Mulia, Lasseban Hansen, Dion Verges, Davide Corps, all drivers who really could be in the top 25 or should be in the top 25 in some accounts. However, there are only 25 places to fill in. And it's intriguing to see how some of the established names aren't in the top 25 or are very close to that danger zone.
Yeah, this is going to be a story that's going to rumble on for the whole season, as it does every year with the R-Race and WCS. The fact that these guys are all racing to get into that magic top 25, it's kind of like bump day at Indianapolis when everyone's on the bubble trying to see exactly where they're going to get in for the Indy 500. This is similar to that, effectively, but it carries on over a season rather than one weekend. So, I mean, looking at other guys that are just outside it as well, we're talking about, we've got like Michele Mancusi's in there, Mogar Filo, Antoine Hegelin, Timo Ivonen, and we talked about, of course, and Fulvio Barazzini, as we said. But the guys outside looking in, effectively, it's hard to kind of tell who's going to be more under pressure, because you've got the guys in there might have a bit of security, but it depends on how much of a gap they have to the drivers around them. Those outside looking in may have less pressure because, of course, they've got less to lose, but of course they're the ones doing the pushing. So it's actually the guys I think who are in the top 25 maybe actually worrying a bit more, thinking about it, because of course, there's no guarantee they're going to be there by the time we reach the final couple of rounds. So it's the race and the performances they have at this point in the season, as we talked about earlier on, saying defining who they're going to be racing against. It's this point in time when they get all the points they can to make sure they can ensure they're in the best possible place they are and they're as secure as possible going towards the end to try and keep in that top 25.
Right then. Let's have a look at the fourth round of the championship. Road America. Track conditions for the race, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to be cloudy today, 54% relative humidity, and a strong wind of 11 miles an hour to the south. So it's going to be difficult for these drivers. We talked about this before we went on air, both in qualifying and the race. Going to be really hard for the drivers. Now, we'll start about qualifying as well. We'll talk more about this when we go onto our race feed. However, you've got to be careful here in qualifying. It's a very long track as well. So if you mess up a qualifying lap, you've got a minute and a half to think about what went wrong before you get the chance to do another lap again.
Yeah, there's some very crucial corners here, of course. I mean, the fact also in what's going to be crucial, of course, in qualifying in the race, the fact is because we've got that wind, it is a southerly wind, which means that the drivers are going to be getting a tailwind down the pit straight. Now, that might help for lap time in qualifying and also definitely for slipstream in the race down the pit straight. But, of course, you've got some very big braking zones for some long straights. Of course, a key corner is going to be turn 5 because, of course, we do have, I'm sure you're going to allude to this in a second, the fact that we've got these brand new rules where you're not allowed to at least go onto that outside part, let alone gain the advantage. Otherwise, you will get a black flag on the exit of turn 5 on the tarmac. But you've got other corners like the exit off the carousel and also through the kink, which is also another very key corner as it sets you up down towards the very treacherous Canada corner, which is a huge braking zone coming down towards there. So, yeah, there's plenty of turns here, and also with the fact you also have some crosswinds across on the hurry down straight between turns 7 and 8. All factors that are going to mean that qualifying, especially here in these conditions, going to be very important. And of course, the circuit's very wide, but of course, with overtaking opportunities, really key on where you are alongside somebody halfway down the straight rather than down towards the braking zone. That's the most important thing. So, yeah, qualifying is going to be oh so important here at Road America.
And, of course, the way qualifying works is that drivers get 3 laps in 15 minutes to try and set themselves the fastest time they possibly can. Qualifying has been important so far this season, and we have seen just how it can really make or break your race. As far as the race goes itself, one thing that is of note is strategy. And I talked to a couple of people before this weekend, and they said that generally people's going to try and do a one-stopper. However, everyone who's a long-term fan of the WCS remembers Max Dell'Orco and his race last year when he went on that alternate two-stop strategy and very close to getting himself a podium finish. If you want to do a two-stop strategy, though, you have got to be overtaking cars every single lap. Very risky to do, and in some ways it's 10 seconds a lap slower. However, if you're on pole position and you've got a teammate right behind you, you might be able to split your strategy. If you're outside the top 10, you can pass some cars, get into some clean air. Actually, a two-stopper could work.
Well, it's a similar situation to what we had back in Suzuka, where effectively everyone was going to run a one-stop strategy, but it's all about whether or not you can make those passes in the early laps to make a two-stop work, because, of course, effectively you're on a lighter fuel load, which means you're going to have to try and make sure that you make the most of it. Now, with Suzuka is a narrower circuit than Road America, which means that it was more crucial. With this one, it's going to be all about slipstream. The fact you've got that tailwind down the pit straight means it can help at least down there. But of course, coming down the back straight, which going down towards turn 5, you're going to have a headwind this time. So that's going to make it even more trickier. And as we talked about turn 5 being a very key corner, it's going to be all about, as I said, the key thing for making passes is going to be where you are, as I said, halfway down the straight and putting yourself in the right position rather than being better under brakes, because that's the nature of the circuit. The length of the straights and the length of where you'd be able to get an opportunity of a tow means that effectively, if you're in the right position, even at some point as the far back is halfway down the straight, it's always kind of guaranteed that you're going to be in the right position, and you'll hold that position all the way through the corner and take the place. So we're going to see quite a lot of passing in that instance, quite a lot through the race, but big braking zones, of course, are going to play into it as well. I think Canada corner, we might see 1 or 2 dives, but of course, there is that long sand trap at the edge, so if anyone's going to try and do it, going to have to be brave.
2 parts of the racetrack which really do stand out for me this weekend. First of all, the kink, and I've been told that if you are in dirty air, the kink is astronomically difficult because of the wind speed and direction. Also, the corners that everyone always forgets about at this racetrack, but are so difficult, turn 6, 7 and 8. Coming up, underneath that Corvette bridge, you've got a change of asphalt, a little bit like turn 6 at Watkins Glen. The camber falls away a little bit, and I've seen so many cars spinning, half spinning, having moments there. And then 7 and 8 itself is very difficult, and the amount of drivers you see, Scott, outbraking themselves into turn number 8, always at least 5 drivers are going to go off there.
Yeah, and that could certainly cause chaos, especially down the middle of the pack when things generally get quite tight. So, it just takes one person at the back of a queue of 5 or 6 drivers to miss their braking point, and it can cause absolute mayhem. So, I mean, I would have thought these guys are going to be sensible enough not to try and make any desperate moves as early as the beginning of part of the race. Of course, that's a more kind of like when you're trying to make up positions near the end. But even then, there's no point being desperate. You have to. This is one of those circuits where you have to be calculated, and you have to be, sizing up your passes early on. You have to start calculating in your head, where can I afford to pull alongside? Where can I afford to brake that little bit later? Where can I afford to get into a bit of dirty air through this corner in order to put myself in a much better position? This is very much a thinking driver's track. Despite the fact we've got long straights, it does give you a lot of the chance to decide what it is you're going to do and how you're going to set the guy up in front. So we'll have to wait and see. But like I said, it just takes one slip of concentration from anyone in a pack of cars to really cause absolute mayhem and then potentially change the outcome of a race.
And as you alluded to a little bit earlier on, this is a Hutu racetrack. It's a racetrack that he's been dominant in WCS in years gone past. As far as the race goes, do you think that he can actually make that bounce back today? Do you think it's going to be Glacier? Or do you think Ferrari are going to get the victory today? Or anyone else?
Well, with regards to Hutu, he's going to have to. I think this is a crucial race at the point. The fact he's had such a rollercoaster start to the season, of course, with a victory, yes, in Spa, but then a non-finish in Interlagos, and then a 4th place in Suzuka. So effectively, I don't think Gregor has a choice really. Effectively, I mean, when we go to the next round of the championship after this, of course, he's going to have to really start. That's when things are probably going to start getting desperate, which of course is the 5th round at Phillip Island. So it could potentially be a race that makes or breaks Hutu's season. We have to wait and see how he performs and if he can put it on pole once again. As for Luis and Glacier TV and Glacier Racing, these two teams should be putting on a great show, hopefully. I mean, Hugo has had some interesting finishes. 2012, he didn't finish because he had some problems on lap 2. I think he got caught up in that incident back a couple of years ago as well. And 2013, he actually finished somewhere in the top 5. So, I mean, it's mixed fortunes for most of these guys, but it all depends on how they can handle it. I think we'll have to wait and see how the first couple of laps shape themselves out off the back of qualifying, and then once it starts to settle down, we'll start to get a picture of who's got the ultimate pace. Because practice is one thing, and so is qualifying, but the race is a completely different story. And you can be quick in qualifying, but have poor race pace, and vice versa. So we'll have to wait and see. I think as soon as those lights go out, let the race play out for a few laps, and then we'll get a proper judge as to who's running what strategy and who really is in contention for the race victory today.
I think, as far as I'm concerned, victory is going to go to Enzo Benito. I think that actually he's going to get a victory here today and kind of really bounce back after his difficult season. My podium will then have Gregor Hutu in second, a Team Redline 1-2, and then I expect to see Oli Picala in third place. I do not expect to see, I don't think, Hugo Luis on the podium here today. He's told me he's had a couple of difficulties. It'll be interesting to see what he does in the race here today. For more information about the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series, head over to WCS.iRacing.com. You've got yourself team bios, driver bios, and of course, you can keep up to date with the entire World Championship Series for the Grand Prix side, and also the Peak and Street NASCAR Series powered by iRacing.com. And if you head over to iRacing.com right now, if you're a new member, you can get yourself a 1 month, 3 month, 1 year or 2 year membership, all at 50% off, and you can join the massively multiplayer online racing simulation with over 45,000 members worldwide. Head over once again to iRacing.com for half price off all new memberships. And that concludes episode 4 of RaceSpot Presents the WCS Spotlight Show. Thank you very much, Scott, for joining me for this episode. We'll be back, of course, in 2 weeks' time for episode 5 of the podcast, which is also available on iTunes by searching for WCS Spotlight. For more information on RaceSpotTV, head over to RaceSpotTV. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter as well. Race coverage for the 4th round of the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series. Tell you what, it starts rather soon. Qualifying and the race will be exclusively live on iRacing Live and also on RaceSpotTV. We're going to take ourselves a short break and we'll be back on air at the bottom of the hour for qualifying. It's going to be a really important qualifying and we'll be with you every step of the way. Myself, Will Vincent, Scott Woodward, this has been a RaceSpotTV presentation of WCS Spotlight. We will talk to you in just a couple of minutes' time. Bye-bye.